Well, good day, my friends. It's your old pal Jordan the Lion. How are you all doing today? I hope you said great. If you loved Harvey Korman, the man that we knew from Blazing Saddles and Carol Burnett show, you're gonna love today's vlog. We are gonna go visit his gravesite, tell about his story, how he actually got fired from Carol Burnett show and then rehired, and just tell you what he did with his life outside of acting. Daze with Jordan the Lion, and you all. It begins right now. Here we are at Woodlawn Cemetery. So to visit Harvey, you want to come up here to the second floor, and you're going to go over here, and he's second one to the window. Down here at the bottom. Such a funny guy. Harvey Korman. You're born, you suffer, and you die. Harvey Herschel Korman. February 15th, 1927 to May 29th, 2008. Harvey was born in Chicago, and his father was a traveling salesman. He would liken him a lot when people would ask him throughout his life to kind of a Willie Loman, like Death of a Salesman, just a traveling salesman, constantly on the back roads. And Harvey knew he wasn't going to do that. But from a young age, he was acting in school plays, and people noticed that he had talent. He ended up being on the radio by the age of 12, and then when he was in a 7th grade play, his teacher thought he was so good that she actually went to his house and told his parents that he should be an actor. And he jokingly said, my mother said, well, I wanted to be a violinist, so we're gonna have to arm wrestle. So he said they arm wrestled, and the acting teacher won. And he said throughout his high school years, he would also love to be in the drama club. And then he went off to college, and World War II broke out. So he went to the service, and when he came back to college, he said he had decided by that point that he wanted to be in journalism, and applied for the journalism school at the college he was attending, and they told him that they had already met their Jewish quota. Yeah, he said actually in those days there was a quota of how many Jewish people they would take, and he was not able to do it. So he said, I just really didn't know what to do next, so I went back to my high school acting teacher and asked for some guidance. And he said, you're an actor, go be an actor. So he went off to school to act, then off to Broadway. And we all knew him, I think, mainly from, or most notably from the Carol Burnett show. But she actually saw him on the Danny Kaye show. He was what they would call a second banana to Danny Kaye on his show, where he would set up all the jokes and Danny would get all the laughs. So when Carol got her deal, which was kind of an interesting thing, she had put into her contract if they didn't, let her have a show by a certain point, she could push a button on her clause that gave her a temporary or like a trial show. And that's what the Carol Burnett show was. And she decided it was going to be a variety show with an ensemble, and she kept saying, we need a Harvey Korman type. I keep thinking of him when he would do all these different shows, and especially the Danny Kaye show. She said, I really think we need a Harvey Korman type. Carol's husband Joe was going to be the producer and director of the show, and so she told him, hey, we need to reach out to Harvey Korman's people. Instead of looking for a Harvey Korman type, why don't we try and get Harvey? And so she said, before we could even reach out, I saw him in the parking lot of the CVS. And she said, I screamed, Harvey! And he looked at me and jumped out of his car and yelled, Carol, and we had a big hug, and I said, Harvey, I have a variety show and I think you'd be perfect for it. And he said, I'll do it. So she said that was, one of the cornerstones for her show. She said, I always felt like I hated to use the term second banana, but she said he was always the second banana on a show, which can be funny and is funny. But she said I knew he was quick-witted. And she said, any good tennis player only becomes better by having somebody that can hit the ball back and give them, a little bit of adventure. And so she knew that doing a variety show with Harvey, who, upon their very first get-together, he was showing all kinds of different characters and different things he could do. They knew that he was going to be able to bounce the ball back fast, as they would say. He could set up a joke, he could reply to her joke and give her, something she could improvise off of. So he was a very integral part to the Carol Burnett show. And a lot of people forget that Tim Conway was not originally a member. He was just a guest for several seasons until they made him a member. But it was some of his scenes with Harvey that would go down in history as some of the greatest. Like the dentist sketch when Harvey ends up laughing so hard when he wasn't supposed to be, because that was always part of it, is Tim Conway would try and make the other actors laugh because they would always do a rehearsal and they would then tape before a studio audience. So they would end up doing 2 takes, filming 2 different versions of, if they thought of something funnier later, they could add it. And so in that one, Harvey actually ends up busting up and laughing, much like he did in many of the other times. But this time he actually says that he peed his pants. Now, even though Harvey was amazing on the show, he self-admittedly was the most cranky of the show, the most personality challenging. And Carol said, we always dealt with that. And she said, until one day I had to fire Harvey Korman from the show. And she said what happened was that they had Petula Clark and Tim Conway both as their guests for that week, and they were doing rehearsals, and Harvey was in an Elvis costume and was just being very rude to them. And she said, after the rehearsals, I went and knocked on his dressing room door, and he opened it up, and I said, what is the matter with you today? I know that you have, you can sometimes be in a mood, and we all put up with it, and that's fine, but you can't do it to the guests. And he said, my mood is none of your business. And she said, well, it is my business when it's affecting the show. And he said, well, I just assume not come back after tonight if that's the way it is. And she said, well, and before she could say anything else, she said, he walked towards her, backed her right out of the room, and then slammed the door in her face. So she said, at lunchtime, I called his agent and I said, Harvey's off the show after tonight. And he said, what? Does he know this? Does your husband Joe know this? And she said, no, but I'll tell him, and it doesn't matter because I'm not going to change my mind. So then she said they did the show, and after the show, she went and knocked on Harvey's door, and she said, Harvey, you are no longer an employee here after tonight. And he said, what? She said, you got your wish. If you're so unhappy here, you don't have to come back. I've already let your agent know. You're done. He said, I'm sorry, what can I do to make it up to you? He said, I have a contract. And she said, yes, but you ruined my performance tonight. I was all over the place, and that just can't go on this show any longer. So he said, what can I do? What can I do? And she said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a second chance. On Monday, I want you to show up here, Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky. I want to see a smile on your face, hear you whistling in the halls and skipping down the halls. I want you to be nice to everybody from now on, no matter what your mood is, and I don't ever want to see what I saw today again. She said, Monday morning, I went to do my fittings, and I was going in the elevator to go up to the second floor to read the script, and she said the door opens, and there's Harvey standing at the elevator door with a big smile on his face. And she said he went skipping and whistling down the halls. And she said, I busted out laughing. And she said, from then on, we never had a problem with Harvey ever again. And she said, he loved to tell the story about how I fired him. She said, I even put a plaque on his dressing room door that said, Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky. And she said, I found out later that, that after the show, after the taping, the cast and crew a lot of times would go to a bar, like a watering hole that was right across from the studio. And she said, I heard that after I, fired him and everything, that following Friday, he went to the bar and told everybody that he had been fired and wanted to toast me and said, I want to toast Carol for reminding me of how much I love this show. And she said nobody expected that out of her, and that was not her personality to be confrontational, but she knew that she was really the only one that could reach Harvey. Now, the Carol Burnett show was around for 11 years, and Harvey was on the show for 10 years. At the end of the 10th year, he asked Joe and Carol to have a dinner with him. And when they got to dinner, he said, I've been offered my own show by another network, and I feel like it's time for me to take it. I feel like I've been, the second banana long enough, and I feel like I'd like to have my chance at being the star of my own show. And she said, as much as we were heartbroken, what could we say? He was so good, and he had been there so long, and she said, he deserved his own show. He deserved everything they were offering him. They were offering him a lot of money and everything, so he ended up leaving the show and went off and did his own show, the Harvey Korman Show, which was a sitcom. He said he didn't really want to do a sitcom, but he said at that time on TV there was really only variety shows and sitcoms. He said we couldn't do a variety show because I had just done the Carol Burnett show, and nothing's bigger than that. But he said he knew from the first script reading that the show was not going to be good. He said first off they only ordered 5 weeks, like 5 episodes, whereas other shows were getting like 30. So he said all the good writers in town were already booked for work. We could only get young people that had never written anything, really had no experiences. He said, you can make a lot of excuses, but in the end, he said, sometimes you have to realize that not everybody's meant to be a star. And he said, that's what I realized, that I was very good at supporting and being the guy that could bounce the ball back and everything, but he said, I accepted that I was never meant to be a star. And he said, he also figured out later on that the head of the studio that signed him had also signed like several other people from big shows on the other networks, like Horace Leachman and people like that. And he said, I figured out later that it was kind of a strategy of his to take some of the biggest stars from some of the biggest shows on the competing networks, hoping that it would make the shows fail. And so he said he thought that's why they ended up, giving him his show. But he said he knew he was not meant for an episodic television show like that, and knew from the beginning that it was going to be a bomb. And as good as he was on the Carol Burnett show, that wasn't the only thing we knew him from. He did a lot of movies and different episodic TV shows as guests, but I mean, Blazing Saddles and The Nut House, both of those, amazing. He loved to work with Mel Brooks, and Mel Brooks really got his humor and really could bring the best out in him. And he said he just kind of chose not to do bad projects. Once he had done Carol Burnett and he had his bad experience with his own show, he said he was kind of picky and choosy about what he did after that. And he said, I just got really involved in charity. He said, any out-of-work actor is the world's greatest philanthropist. So he said, I realized that since I love to play golf and things like that, a lot of people would pay money to charities to play golf with me. So he said I could, raise a couple of $100 for a good cause. Like he would always raise money for leukemia and Rice syndrome. And he said that, hey, if all I'm going to have to do is go out and play golf with Richard Crenna and, a couple of people that enjoy my work and some golf pros, he said, hey, what better way to raise some money than that? So lived up in Bel Air and would go to the Bel Air Country Club, and God, just one of the funniest guys of all time. What a dynamic duo, Tim Conway and Harvey Korman. Rest in peace, Harvey. You're born, you suffer, and you die. Well, my friends, I hope you enjoyed our little tribute to Harvey Korman. I just love those stories, and a lot of those stories that I got were directly from Carol Burnett's book, telling every little bit of history from the show, as well as HARVEY KORMAN giving interviews and being very open about his history. So he knew he was difficult, he knew who he was, and you know, hey, that's the way we all should be. Own up to who you are. Thank you all for watching. We will see you next time. Have a great night and goodbye.